Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. The US military says it killed a senior operative of Al-Qaeda in an airstrike on northwestern Syria as part of an ongoing operation against terrorist groups in the region. Ukraine launches new drone attacks on Russia, targeting an oil refinery in southern Volgorod region. The refinery caught fire, which was later put out, as per Russian officials. Chinese startup DeepSeek will face questions from South Korea's data watchdog on how it manages personal information of users. Concerns over privacy and national security over the app have also been raised in the US, Australia and Italy. A landslide at a gold mine in southern Mali kills at least 10 people and leaves numerous more missing. Officials say the majority of the victims are women. And Uganda confirms an outbreak of the Ebola virus in the capital city of Kampala and the death of a nurse due to the disease. Hello and welcome. Our top focus remains on the volatile situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have now vowed to march toward the capital Kinshasa after making advances in the mineral-rich east. The M23 alliance says they will stay in the captured city of Goma, the largest city in the DRC's east, and will continue advances to Kinshasa.
We are here in Goma to stay as Congolese and to protect the population against threats. We will continue the march of liberation all the way to Kinshasa.
So far, Rwanda-backed rebels have claimed significant territory in the country's mineral-rich east. They have taken control of Goma, capital of North Kivu province, and are just 80 kilometers away from Bukavu, the capital of South Kivu province. The capital, Kinshasa, lies in central part of the country. In South Kivu's capital, Bukavu, hundreds of people, including former Congolese soldiers and youth, are mobilizing a potential counter-offensive against the advancing M23 rebels.
We don't have time to cry because they killed our loved ones, our mothers. We will take revenge. They shed our blood with weapons and machetes. If this is how they want war, then may God forgive us, but we will fight with the same means to defend our own.
The ongoing crisis in the DRC is reverberating across the world. US President Donald Trump has now spoken and called it a very serious problem.
You're asking me a question about Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem, I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it, but it is a very serious problem.
Meanwhile, more countries in the region have now been embroiled in the conflict. Tensions are also rising between Rwanda and South Africa, which already had troubled diplomatic ties. South African soldiers who are deployed in the DRC for a peacekeeping mission have been attacked by the M23 rebels. The country has lost 13 of its soldiers to the fighting. Pretoria says any further attack would be seen as a declaration of war by Rwanda. President Cyril Ramaphosa said his troops will remain in the DRC to maintain peace. The Rwandan President Paul Kagame has responded. He says he will deal with South Africa if any confrontation starts, and that Ramaphosa should not play a peacemaker.
He's also there pretending to be playing a peacemaker role, and he has a force that has been fighting alongside FDLR and has been fighting the M23 on the instructions of Tshisekedi, because these are people who are not supposed to be in Congo, that these are from Rwanda, or the M23 are not Rwandans, please.
Rwanda has defended its support to the Tutsi-led M23 rebels, slamming the international criticism. It says its primary interest is to eradicate fighters linked to the country's 1994 Tutsi genocide, which it says are supported by the DRC. However, Rwanda has been accused of seeking to profit from the DRC's eastern region, rich in minerals that are used in global electronics. Global tech giants like Apple have also been dragged into the conflict. Apple is facing a probe in France and Belgium as it has been accused by the DRC of using the conflict minerals. It has alleged that large quantities of minerals controlled by the rebels are transported to neighboring Rwanda and end up in phones and computers. And Rwanda denies selling any minerals to Apple. Decades-long fighting has left mineral-rich DRC and one of the largest nations in Africa below the global poverty line average. Now, the Congolese army is also considered unprofessional and ill-equipped in front of the M23 rebels and the Rwandan forces. Is the fall of Kinshasa near? For more on this, we have with us Kambale Musavuli, who is an analyst with the Center for Research on the Congo-Kinshasa and is joining us live from Accra in Ghana. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, the M23 rebels have made significant territorial gains in the east and now threaten to march on Kinshasa. What are the key factors driving their resurgence, and how realistic is their goal of reaching the capital?
I would take that threat very seriously because the current uprising of M23 is not different from past uprisings, right? So if you think about what happened in Congo in 1996, we had the same soldiers from the M23 were part of the AFDL, backed by Rwanda and Uganda then, and they marched onto the capital city. And as they do so, I hope that it will allow people to understand that the claims of why they're fighting does not really make sense, because why are they going to the capital city, right? If they are fighting for protecting a minority group, they are fighting to to hold those who committed the genocide in Rwanda accountable. Somehow they're finding their ways thousands of miles away from where they are.
Yeah. The crisis in the DRC has deep regional dimensions, with Rwanda often accused of supporting the M23 and Uganda playing a role as well. How do these external influences shape the conflict, and what diplomatic efforts are being made to prevent further escalation?
It's important to look at the facts, right? So when we're talking about the accusation and allegation, let's look at the facts. There is a body called the UN Group of Experts, which has a mandate of the UN Security Council. They publish 2 reports a year on the situation in the Congo. They have documented that the M23 is using night vision goggle, anti-drone missiles, GPS jamming systems, SHORAD system, Elbit systems mortar. So I'm throwing a lot of names of different military equipment that they are using. And this is not something you just casually buy online or in some store somewhere, right? These are sophisticated weaponry. And the UN Group of Experts have tied those the weaponry to the Rwanda military, the Rwanda Defense Force. And they've presented the evidence, photographic evidence, drone footage, and the movement of Rwandan soldiers in the Congo. So the evidence is present. The discussion around the situation in the Congo is void of that reality of looking at the facts, right? So we know Rwanda and Uganda are involved, according to the UN Group of Experts. But what we don't see right now is that when evidence is presented, and that even Security Council members say that the evidence is credible, there is a lack of action on holding the M23 or Rwanda responsible, right? So that should be the discussion we want to have about, you know, how do we move forward for peace and stability? Because after 29 years, this conflict should not continue to exist.
Right. And given the vast mineral wealth of the Eastern DRC, how much of this conflict, in your view, is fueled by economic interests? And what role do international companies and foreign powers play in sustaining the unrest?
The world today is at the brinks of coming out with the fourth industrial revolution. We're talking about AI, right? There is this AI revolution. We're talking about a boom in modern day technology, the green revolution, where we're talking about electric cars, right? Congo, a country the size of Western Europe, is the #1 producer of cobalt. And you cannot build an electric car without Congo's cobalt. We are the #1 producer. We also have coltan, right? Coltan is a mineral used in cell phones and many electronic devices. And we have the largest coltan in the world in a town called Rubaya. The rebels have taken control of the largest coltan reserve in Rubaya. And we've seen how every month, according to the UN group of experts, they are generating $800,000 of taxation on mining these resources. So on one hand, you have these rebels moving forward, taking time with claims. On the other, we see that they're actually finding their way to the mines, you know, getting access to the mineral resources. So we know it's the driving force beyond the conflict, and Rwanda and Uganda are benefiting in the process.
Right. Kambale, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights and analysis on that latest conflict in Goma.
Thank you so much.
Moving on now, it looks like France's military chapter in the Sahel region has finally come to an end. The former colonizer has handed over its last base in Chad to local authorities. In a military ceremony in the Central African country's capital city of N'Djamena, France had nearly 1,000 personnel in Chad and has now handed over the Sergeant Adjikosi Air Base near the capital city to the Chadian military. This was after it previously handed over the Abeche base in the east earlier in January and the Faye-Lagu base in the north in December last year.
The transfer of the Kasai base today marks a new stage. It is part of the French decision to end permanent bases in Central and West Africa. This structural change is necessary to adapt to the evolution of the world and the evolution of Africa. We are reaffirming our partnerships in a dynamic Africa whose youth carries a lot of hope. We must act differently.
Welcoming the definitive and complete departure of the French forces from the country, Chad's President Mohamed Idriss Déby Itno says at an event organized at the base that Chad was not breaking off its relationship with France. He added that Chad was only ending the military dimension of the cooperation with Paris. Now, President Itno also said that Chad must build a stronger and better equipped army, and further noted that Chad must forge new alliances based on mutual respect. Now, the handover of the last military base comes just 2 months after the former French colony in Central Africa abruptly broke off its defense cooperation agreement with Paris, forcing France to begin pulling back its troops from the country. The Central African country had given Paris until the 31st of January to withdraw from its territory. To give some context, Chad was a key link in France's military presence in Africa. It was one of the last countries in which Paris had maintained a large military presence. Soldiers and fighter aircraft from the former colonizer had been stationed in Chad almost continuously since the country's independence in the 1960s, helping to train the Chadian military. However, joining the anti-France chorus in the region, Chad's president, who has been in power since 2021, said the cooperation with France had become completely obsolete in light of the political and geostrategic realities.
Building on 66 years of progress since the proclamation of the Republic, Chad is fully entitled, and even obligated, to freely define its international relations, choose the forms of cooperation it desires, and conduct its defense policy according to its priorities. We have therefore decided to terminate this military cooperation to refocus our partnership with France on areas that will have a more positive impact on the daily lives of our respective populations.
Now, at its height, France's Sahel contingent had numbered more than 5,000 troops. As a part of the anti-jihadist operation Barkhane, which ended in November of 2022. But now more than 70% of the continent has thrown France and its troops out. This is primarily due to resentment from perceived French interference in their countries. France is being kicked out by the military authorities in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, following years of fighting Islamic extremists alongside the regional troops. The West African juntas have pivoted toward Russia in recent years, which has been militarily backing them. Now, additionally, Senegal and the Ivory Coast have also begun negotiating the withdrawal of French forces from their territories. Now, this has left France with troops only in Djibouti and Gabon, and reports suggest that the base in Djibouti, which hosts 1,500 troops, would soon be used as a launching pad for future missions in Africa following the forced withdrawal from the Sahel. But as France's military chapter comes to a close in the Sahel region, the question remains, can Paris improve its relations with its former colonies that have now turned to Russia? And troubles for European nations in Africa are more than just waning military influence. A new shocking report has revealed that African migrants are being sold for as little as $12, and Europe has a role in it. Now, a new human rights report has revealed migrants in Tunisia are being sold as slaves to Libyan gangs with the complicity of the European Union. The humanitarian organization that has compiled the report carried out research in the shanty camps and desert detention centers of North Africa. Now, these centers are funded by the European Union and Italy to round up migrants trying to reach their shores. But curbing immigration is coming at a high humanitarian cost. Tens of thousands of migrants from various African nations end up being kidnapped, tortured, with many reporting being sexually assaulted, and some even end up being killed. As per the report, Tunisian police and soldiers round up and arrest the migrants. They are then put onto buses, with some of them confined with plastic zip ties, and transported and sold to gangs in neighboring Libya. Some are sold for as low as $12. Women are sold at higher prices due to their exploitation as sex slaves. Then in Libya, many are sent to notorious migrant prisons, where they are either held for ransom, forced into labor, or sold again to other criminal networks. Tunisian police and Libyan militia reportedly refer to the captured migrants as black gold. European funding has allegedly played a significant role in this migrant slave trade. Every year, thousands of African migrants reach the European nations through dangerous sea journeys across the Mediterranean. They typically depart from North African countries like Libya and Tunisia in small, overcrowded boats, and they reach countries like Italy, Spain, and Greece. However, many have died in the process. The EU has spent millions of dollars training and equipping Libyan and Tunisian border guards to stop the migration to Europe. But these funds are allegedly being used to detain, traffic, and sell migrants instead. Since 2017, Italy has also provided millions of dollars to Tunisia and Libya to prevent immigration. This has reduced the number of boats reaching Europe by 59%, a figure celebrated by the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Now, just days ago, Meloni revealed that she is under investigation by Italian judges for allegedly allowing the release of a Libyan warlord who is accused by the International Criminal Court of murdering, raping, and torturing migrants. She has been accused by the critics of deliberately freeing the general to ensure Libya's continued support in blocking migrant boats. The dark side behind the efforts has now been exposed. But will that force Europe to change its approach towards immigration? And for our last story today, let us turn our attention to West Africa. Benin has sentenced 2 men close to the president to 20 years in prison. This after they were found guilty for plotting to overthrow President Patrice Talon. The accused were arrested in September last year for bribing the presidential guard's head to plan a coup against Talon. Now the sentencing comes at a time when Talon is under fire for tarnishing Benin's image and changing it from a vibrant democracy in a region known for military coups to an authoritarian state. Our next report gets you all the details.
In the West African nation of Benin, a court has sentenced 2 former allies of President Patrice Talon to 20 years in jail. Their crime, plotting to overthrow the head of the state. Olivier Boko, an influential businessman considered to be Talon's right-hand man, and Oswald Homeki, a former sports minister, have been found guilty of conspiring against the authority of the state. They are also being charged with corruption and forgery by the court for financial crimes and terrorism in the capital city of Cotonou. In addition to the 20-year sentence, the court has also ordered the men to pay $95 million in damages to the Beninese state and has also handed individual fines of $6.8 million each. Now, both these men were arrested in September last year after being accused of bribing the commander in charge of the president's security to carry out a coup. Homeki was caught while allegedly handing over 6 bags of money to the head of the presidential guard. Boko, who expressed his interest in running for the 2026 presidential elections, was arrested separately and accused of being the mastermind behind the coup attempt. Their trial's opening hearing on January 21st had ended in uproar when the Cotonou court ordered the defendants to find a new defense team. This was after their lawyers had stormed out in protest at the makeup of the court, which consisted of 3 judges instead of the usual 5.
After discussing the matter with the clients, we have decided that if there is to be a trial under such conditions I have just described, there is no point in our participation, and this is what forced us to withdraw.
What is the point of a lawyer being present in such a proceeding? And maybe people may not be aware that the presence of a lawyer is to validate a procedure. We understood and said, we cannot validate a procedure that is conducted in violation of the most basic, most evident rules.
Now, Benin has been among the most stable democracies in Western and Central Africa, a region that has seen over 10 coup attempts since 2020. However, opposition leaders and human rights organizations have accused Talon of using the justice system to attack his political opponents after taking office in 2016 and changing electoral rules to enable him to consolidate power in 2021. In August, an online critic of the president, Steve Amusu, was detained and ordered to stand trial on allegations of publishing falsehoods and inciting rebellion. Then, in 2021, opposition politician Rekia Madugu was sentenced to 20 years in jail for complicity in terrorist acts. In the same year, Joel Ivo, another critic of President Talon, was handed a 10-year sentence for undermining state security and for money laundering. This has further led critics to accuse Talon of tarnishing the image of a country once praised for its dynamic and vibrant democracy. But, on his part, Talon has promised not to seek a 3rd term in office in the 2026 election. This is because Benin's constitution limits the number of presidential terms to just 2. He has also vowed to protect the constitution.
No political compromise detrimental to our development will be conceded to please anyone
or satisfy any political consensus. Benin is above all else. Democracy and political competition must henceforth be exclusively and absolutely at the service of development. Long live progress, long live Benin.
But will the West African country, which has previously seen a coup attempt in 1977, uphold its democratic ethos in a region that is known for military coups? Only time will tell.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.